U.S. government or border.
We're touring Blackwater Worldwide's North Carolina compound. Our guide is 39-year-old CEO Erik Prince.
We'll go to medical. That's down here.
We hustle to keep up, whether on foot or behind the wheel of a company SUV. Prince covers the compound's major landmarks and the story of the company's growth in rapid-fire succession.
Oh, look at that. There's a bear right there. Look forward. That was not staged.
The company granted a team of AP journalists rare on-camera access to their property. There were ground rules, questions they didn't want us to ask, places they wouldn't let us film.
Shut the camera off a minute.
Prince says he's trying to protect the privacy of his clients, and we quickly learn there are things here he just doesn't want our cameras to see.
If we turn the cameras off, I'll show it to you. How about that?
But Prince wouldn't open the doors of his company to the prying eyes of the media without a motive. He's out to change public perception of the company he launched a decade ago. Perception that pegs any negative news about war zone contractors on Blackwater.
There's 170-some companies doing work, security work, and because we, it got to the point that anybody that any American in an SUV as a security contractor, it was a Blackwater guy, and that's just not the case.
Stand by.
Grab.
On this day, much of the activity takes place on the company's multiple firearms training ranges. The students include members of the military and delegations from law enforcement agencies around the world. Sergeant David Adderhold commands the Sheriff's Office SWAT team in DeKalb County, Georgia.
All the instructors that we know are the most professional that there are, and it's never in our mind to actually even try to send somebody somewhere else besides up here to Blackwater.
As for their overseas operations, executives insist the company is supporting the U.S. government, doing jobs the military can't do, and saving taxpayers money in the process.
The military can't be all things to all people all the time. They're always going to have some pieces that the private sector can help in.
Our last visit is to what the company calls Memorial Park. It stands in tribute to more than 24 Blackwater employees lost in the line of duty. Sacrifices made for a company Prince says he wants to be part of the solution. But can he put a positive spin on a name that so many associate with what went wrong in Iraq? Jason Bronis, The Associated Press, Moyock, North Carolina.
Blackwater USA was formed on December 26, 1998 by Al Clark and Erik Prince in North Carolina to provide training support to military and law enforcement organizations. In explaining Blackwater's purposes, Erik Prince stated, "We are trying to do for the national security apparatus that FedEx did for the Postal Service." After working with SEALs and SWAT teams, Blackwater USA received its first government contract following the bombing of the USS Cole off the coast of Yemen in October of 2000. Erik Prince purchased approximately 7,000 acres of the Great Dismal Swamp, a vast swamp on the North Carolina-Virginia border that is now mostly a national wildlife refuge. Prince told reporter Robert Young Pelton that they needed 3,000 acres to make it safe. There, he created his private training facility and his contracting company Blackwater, which he named for the peat-colored watering of the swamp. The Blackwater Lodge and Training Center officially opened on May 15, 1998, with a 6,000-acre, $6.5 million facility. The training facility comprises several ranges, including indoor, outdoor, urban reproductions, an artificial lake, and a driving truck in Camden and Kermituck counties. The company says it's in the largest training facility in the country. The concept was not a financial success and was kept financially solvent by sales from their sister company, Blackwater Target Systems. Shortly after the attacks of September 11, 2001, Cofer Black, the former CIA head of counter-terrorism, put out the word to hire more than 100 shooters for Afghanistan. The CIA would sheep dip, reassign under false cover, active operators and active green badgers, cleared agency contractors for the CIA Special Activities Division. Once the agency moved from using small mobile paramilitary operations in Afghanistan to larger fixed installations, it quickly realized that it needed a more robust type of protection. The tiny old boys network was soon tapped out. That's when the CIA turned to Erik Prince and his clubhouse. In the spring of 2002, Buzzy Cronard, the number 3 at the agency, presented Prince with Blackwater's first mission. Could Prince provide 20 men with top secret clearances and have them on a plane to Kabul within a few days? Their job in Afghanistan would be to protect the CIA headquarters and one remote CIGA base in Sheikh, supporting the hunt for bin Laden. Friends were called, and Prince quickly had his team. At 6 months, $5.4 million contract was rushed through as sole source urgent and compelling need. What's more, Prince assigned himself to be part of the group so he could make sure his customer was being well served. Once in Afghanistan, Prince couldn't wait to get back to the States. He realized right away that he could make millions providing security teams that he could running a full shooting range. His new private military company would be to the Pentagon as FedEx was to the Postal Service, and his sales pitch to the CIA bureaucrats was about as sophisticated as his $17 haircut. We did it cheaper and better, he boasts. Blackwater was paying each man $550 a day, billing the agency $1,500 all in all. It was hard for Prince to lose money. Blackwater would later play a substantial role during the Iraq War. As a contractor for the United States government in 2003, Blackwater attained its first high-profile contract when it received a $21 million no-bid contract for guarding the head of the Coalition Provisional Authority, L. Paul Bremer. Since June of 2004, Blackwater has been paid more than $320 million out of a $1 billion 5-year State Department budget for the Worldwide Personal Protection Service, which protects U.S. officials and some foreign officials in conflict zones. By 2006, Blackwater was awarded a contract to protect diplomats for the U.S. Embassy in Iraq, the largest American embassy in the world. It is estimated by the Pentagon and company representatives that there are 20,000 to 30,000 armed security contractors working in Iraq. And some estimates are as high as 100,000, though no official figures exist. So the State Department's dependence on private contractors like Blackwater for security purposes. U.S. Ambassador to Iraq, Ryan Crocker, told the U.S. Senate there was simply no way at all that the State Department's Bureau of Diplomatic Security could ever have enough full-time personnel to staff the security function in Iraq. There is no alternative except through contracts. According to former CIA Director Michael Hayden, contracted third parties like Blackwater to perform waterboarding on suspects. Leaked in 2009, suggested CIA Blackwater contracts to assassinate al-Qaeda leaders as well. The Iraqi government revoked Blackwater's license to operate in Iraq on September 17, 2007, after a massacre in Niquor Square, Baghdad, in which Blackwater contractors were later convicted of killing 17 Iraqi civilians. The deaths occurred while a Blackwater private security detail was escorting a convoy of U.S. State Department vehicles en route to a meeting in western Baghdad with the U.S. Agency for International Development officials. The license was reinstated by the American government in April of 2008, but in early 2009, the Iraqis announced that they had refused to extend the license. In 2009, FBI investigators were unable to match the bullets from the shooting to those guns carried by Blackwater contractors, leaving open the possibility that insurgents also fired at the victims. In 2010, Erik Prince, the company's founder, said the government is looking for dirt to support what he dismissed as baseless accusations that run the gamut from negligence, racial discrimination, prostitution, wrongful death, murder, and the smuggling of weapons into Iraq in dog food containers. He pointed out that current and former executives have been regularly deposed by federal agencies. Prince argued back in September of 2007 that there was a rush to judgment against Blackwater due to inaccurate information. However, on March 31st, 2004, Iraqi insurgents in Fallujah ambushed 2 USVs, killing 4 Blackwater contractors inside. Local residents hung the charred bodies across a bridge toward the Euphrates. In response, U.S. Marines attacked the city in Operation Vigilant Resolve, which became the first Battle of Fallujah. In the fall of 2007, a congressional report by the House Oversight Committee found that Blackwater intentionally delayed and impeded investigations into the contractors' deaths. The report also acknowledges that members of the now defunct Iraqi Civil Defense Corps led the team into the ambush, facilitated blocking positions to prevent the team's escape, and then disappeared. Intelligence reports concluded that Ahmed Hashim Abid al-Hassawi was the mastermind behind the attack, and he was captured after a Navy SEAL Special Operations Unit in 2009 found him. Al-Iswa was ultimately handed over to Iraqi authorities for trial and executed by hanging sometime before November of 2013. On February 16, 2005, 4 Blackwater guards escorting a U.S. State Department convoy in Iraq had fired 70 rounds into a car. The guards stated that they felt threatened when the driver ignored orders to stop as he approached the convoy. The fate of the car's driver was unknown because the convoy did not stop after the shooting. An investigation by the State Department's Diplomatic Security Service concluded that the shooting was not justified, that the Blackwater employees provided false statements to investigators. The statements claimed that one of the Blackwater vehicles had been hit by insurgent gunfire, but the investigation concluded that one of the Blackwater guards had actually fired into his own vehicle by accident. On February 6, 2006, a sniper employed by Blackwater Worldwide opened fire from the roof of the Iraqi Justice Ministry, killing 3 guards working for the state-funded Iraqi media network. Many Iraqis at the scene said the guards had not fired on the Justice Ministry. The U.S. State Department said, however, that their actions fell within approved rules governing the use of force based on information obtained by Blackwater guards. Also, on December 24, 2006, the security guard of the Iraqi president, Abdel Abdul Mahdi, was shot and killed while on duty outside the Iraqi prime minister's compound. The Iraqi government had accused Andrew J. Moonen, a Blackwater employee at the time, of killing him while drunk. Moonen was subsequently fired by Blackwater for violating alcohol and firearms policy and traveled from Iraq to the United States days after the incident. The Department of Justice investigated and announced in 2010 that they were declining to prosecute Moonen, citing a likely affirmative defense of self-defense and high standards for initiating such a prosecution. Many other incidents would tail and haunt Blackwater throughout the years in Iraq. Meanwhile, on October 2nd, 2007, Erik Prince attended a congressional hearing conducted by the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform following the many controversies relating to Blackwater's conduct, not just in Iraq, but also in Afghanistan. Blackwater hired the public relations from the BKSH and Associates Worldwide, a subsidiary of Bernson Martha Stellar, to help Prince prepare for the testimony at the hearing. Robert Tappan, a former U.S. State Department official who worked for the Coalition Provisional Authority in Baghdad, was one of the executives highlighting the account. Bernson Martha Stellar was brought aboard by the McDermott, Will and Emery, and Crowell and Morning, the Washington law firms representing Blackwater. BKSH, a self-described bipartisan from Hillary Clinton when pursuing the Democratic presidential nomination, was also a client, is headed by Charlie Black, a prominent Republican political strategist and former chief spokesman for the Republican National Committee, and Scott Pastrick, former treasurer of the Democratic National Committee. In his testimony before Congress, Prince said the company had a lack of remedies to deal with employee misdeeds. When asked why Andrew Moonen had been whisked out of the country after the shooting death of the vice presidential guard, he replied, "We can't flog him, we can't incinerate him." When asked by a member of Congress for financial information about the company, Prince declined to provide documentation, saying, "We're a private company." And there's a key word there, private. Later, he stated that the company could provide, at a future date, financial records if questions were submitted in writing. When the term mercenaries was used to describe Blackwater employees, Prince objected, characterizing the term as loyal Americans. A staff report compiled by the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform on behalf of Representative Henry Waxman questioned the cost effectiveness of using Blackwater forces instead of U.S. troops. Blackwater charges the government $1,222 per day per guard, equivalent to $500,000 per year, or 6 times more than the cost of an equivalent U.S. soldier, the report alleged. During the testimony in Capitol Hill, Erik Prince disputed this figure, saying that it costs money for the government to train a soldier, to house and feed them. They just don't come prepared to fight. That sergeant doesn't show up naked and untrained. Prince stated, moreover, he pointed out that Blackwater's employees are trained in special operations and exceeded the capabilities of the average soldier. In the wake of Prince's testimony before Congress, the U.S. House passed a Military Extraterritorial Jurisdiction Act in October of 2007 that subsequently led to the prosecution by U.S. courts of some U.S. military contractors, but only for incidents involving attacks on U.S. nationals. The legal status of Blackwater and other security firms in Iraq was a subject of contention. A July 2007 report from the American Congressional Research Service indicated that the Iraqi government still has no authority over private security firms contracted by the U.S. government. And on October 5th, 2007, the State Department announced new rules for Blackwater's armed guards operating in Iraq. Under the new guidelines, State Department security agents will accompany all Blackwater units operating in and around Baghdad. The State Department will also install video surveillance equipment in all Blackwater armored vehicles and will keep recordings of all radio communications between Blackwater convoys in Iraq and the military and civilian agencies that supervise their activities. Many lawsuits would be hessed at Blackwater, including Halveston versus Blackwater of 2004. On November 27, 2004, an aircraft operated by Presidential Airways and owned by a sister company, Blackwater, crashed in Afghanistan. It had been a contract flight for the United States Air Force en route to Bagram to Farah. 3 soldiers and 3 civilian crew members who were aboard the plane were killed. Other federal prosecution included in August of 2012, in which the company agreed to pay $7.5 million in fines without admitting guilt to the U.S. government to settle various charges against pre-Blackwater personnel. On December 22nd, 2020, U.S. President Donald Trump pardoned 4 former Blackwater contractors serving long prison terms, Nicholas Laden, Paul Slough, Evan Liberty, and Dustin Hurd, for their role in the Niquor Square attack. The pardons do not establish innocence, however. They were criticized both in the U.S. and in Iraq as condoning killing of innocent civilians. Blackwater, just one of many dozens of private military firms that now act as a bully for the U.S. private firms and foreign dignitaries. When will the people finally speak out against their crimes?